Gaming icons are a rarer thing these days than they used to be. Back in the times of the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, you could see entire franchises live or die by how well their mascots did. Everything from Sonic to Mario, Earthworm Jim, and the Double Dragon Boys, the name recognition of some of these characters was so strong that even games that had nothing to do with their franchises could be sold under their names and do well. It was exceedingly rare for any gaming company back in the day to mess with their icons, which is why Mega Man is such an interesting character to look back on these days, most particularly as we analyze his evolution of the original Blue Bomber to the 90s hero of Mega Man X. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. So yeah, the character of Mega Man stands out more so than probably any other main character in video gaming, simply because of the amount of times he has been reinvented throughout the years. While the original character is very much a classic that people are familiar with, we also got Volnut from Legends, the EXE hero of Battle Network, and the alien that is the Star Force, each having their own stories to tell. But it was in the 90s with Mega Man X that really started it all, being the first real reinterpretation of the Blue Bomber, and in many ways both the most important and cliched when it came to how a character was designed, his history, and the overall impact of the character in his franchise. It's actually kind of amazing considering the development of the character and the fact that this game was pretty much being made alongside another Mega Man game at the exact same time. In particular, Mega Man 6 for the NES. It's a bit of a weirder concept to think of now, but back in the era of the 8 and 16-bit, a new console didn't mean the immediate death of the previous one. So while the Super Nintendo was available for a good 3 years at this point, Capcom was still actually designing and making video games for the NES at the time. In fact, it was when the Super Nintendo got released that they started working on Mega Man X. To take advantage of the new hardware, Keiji Inafune, the Mega Man series artist and the man responsible for Mighty No. 9, has gone on record that with the new system, they needed to reinvent the game itself, wanting to go with a more mature storyline and expanding the gameplay while keeping some of the core elements that everyone would recognize as good old classic Mega Man. Honestly, I'm not too certain about this myself on how much this wasn't the 90s being the 90s, what with its over-muscled, super macho, super shoulder pad wearing characters needing to have big guns and an even bigger attitude. Hell, Sonic's entire personality when he came out was the fact that he was the edgier, cooler Mario. So when it came to reinventing Mega Man, a lot of those same ideas came into being. Now that said, even taking the 90s into account, the story of X is actually overall more solid than his cherubic predecessor. While the original Blue Bomber was an assistant robot given the ability to fight to help save the world from robots that were reprogrammed by Dr. Wily, X's entire backstory is that he was the final creation of Dr. Light, being a robot that actually has the ability to think, feel, and make decisions on his own. This was done in an attempt by the good doctor in hopes that robot kind could be seen as equals alongside humans and evolve in the same way. Sadly, being already fairly old when he had created Mega Man, Dr. Light wouldn't live long enough to ensure that X would be safe for the world at large, so he sealed him away in a capsule that would run diagnostics on the robot to ensure that he would be safe when they were done. X was then discovered 100 years later by a Dr. Kane, who would then make all future robots based off X design. This new breed of robots, known as the Reploids, were designed to emulate X and have some measure of being able to think, feel, and decide on their own. This turned out to be a bad idea because when you're giving a walking tank that can shoot fire the ability of free will, you're also giving it the free will to choose badly. The robots that became aggressive to humankind, either through their own will or because of a virus that could affect them, were eventually known as Mavericks, who went on to become underneath the control of one single robot known as Sigma. This robot had actually once fought and hunted Mavericks alongside X before eventually becoming the very thing he was fighting against, wishing to usher in a golden age for the Reploids. Now, this isn't the extent of the story that happens in Mega Man X, as the entire thing gets longer and a lot more convoluted, considering there are a full 8 titles in the base series, a full-on sequel series both in the Mega Man Zero and ZX franchises, as well as connections in other video games. But needless to say that the idea of a war started up by a bunch of viral infected robots while playing a hero whose job was to bring them down was pretty dark compared to the original franchise. Add in the design of the game with sharper lines, darker palettes, and harsher tones sold many people into the game itself. And this is also when you consider what I said before, since the other Mega Man game to come out at this time, by the difference of a 1-month term in release, was Mega Man 6 for the NES. Now, part of this was simply based on the specs and capabilities of the system, to be sure, but the obvious difference of what X offered in terms of look and feel kinda blew what the 6th venture of Mega Man could offer out of the water. Even if it had a unique feature with all of the robot masters being designed by fans of the franchise, that kind of paled in comparison to having a new, darker hero that didn't just have Dr. Wily come out of the woodwork and take control of a robot for the umpteenth time. Looking at each game from its design point, you can get a sense that developers felt a bit more free with how they handled X and the rest of the game. By this point in the franchise, Mega Man had so many power-ups that he had gotten over the years that it felt like it needed to be incorporated, such as the rush suits that gave the Blue Bomber extra things like a jetpack or the ability to punch really hard. In some ways, it felt like the original character was weighed down with a bunch of extras that could sometimes feel like they didn't have a place in the game. With a new system and a new protagonist, it's clear that they didn't feel as pressured to add the same bells and whistles that the original series had. Instead, what they did was improve on them. In his series, X will often find more capsules that were left behind by Dr. Light that will further upgrade his body, increasing what he's capable of doing. This idea actually came about apparently because RPGs were getting popular at the time, and the developers wanted to emulate it while sticking with the role of the action platformer. This is also likely where the heart containers would also come from, as they were popular among other games from different genres, such as the Legend of Zelda series. It was with this that Capcom really pushed forward, with Mega Man X being their next big title in the series. They didn't even bother to release Mega Man 6 in the US at this point, as the NES was on its last legs of its life. I'm not kidding about this. Apparently, it was Nintendo of America who were the ones that were wanting to push out the Blue Bomber 6 outing into the States. Though, if anything I had to guess, it was because of the fan-made Robot Masters, 2 of which actually coming from America. Mega Man X's first outing is considered by many to be the most defining game for the Mega Man franchise. Not only did it redefine what a Mega Man game could really be, keeping many aspects of the original formula while enhancing them for a new system, it also brought the franchise into a new era of style and storytelling. Instead of relying on the Astro Boy-like hero they had before, Capcom would embrace new software and new ideas to create a hero for a new era. And while X himself hasn't seen a proper game since 2005 and the 8th game of his own series, he is still heralded as one of the more defining characters of his franchise. Perhaps we'll see more of him again in the future. Regardless, I hope I've done a good job to entertain you, and I'll do my best to do so again in the future. Hopefully you'll follow along with my content by subscribing and doing all the other things that gives us YouTubers life. But until next time, stay frosty.